Welcome again to our third session of this lecture series. Again, my name is Dr. Lisa Wisniewski. I am an associate professor of sociology here at Goodwin University. Well, actually, here's my home right now, but at Goodwin University. And today our topic is on the crucial need for cybersecurity. Before I get started, I just would like to remind everyone to please put themselves on mute. We have, just to make sure for sound. And now I want to introduce our panelists. Today, we actually have three panelists who are going to be talking about the important topics within cybersecurity. So I would like to introduce them first and then get into our conversation. So first, I have Dr. Kimberly Myers, who has been the Director and Associate Professor of Criminal Justice, Homeland Security, and Public Safety and Security Programs at Goodwin University since 2015. She has also served as an adjunct instructor in criminal justice at Mitchell College from 2015 to 2018. Before coming to Goodwin University, Kimberly worked for the Connecticut State Police, assigned to the Bureau of Identification, specializing in fingerprint identification and classification. She has also taught police academy recruits and police probation officers on fingerprinting techniques, AFIS, automated fingerprint identification system, comparison of specific types of fingerprints, and post-mortem fingerprint identification from crime scenes and autopsies. Kimberly's research area encompasses active shooter preparedness training on college and university campuses, threat assessment, and policy implementation. She has published journal articles, a book chapter, as well as numerous presentations surrounding active shooter training. In 2020, Kimberly was awarded the Goodwin University Make a Difference Award. So thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Dr. Myers, for joining us here today. We also have Professor Kevin Mcneil, who is a former police officer with almost 2 decades of experience investigating various cybercrimes. He is an associate professor of psychology at Goodwin University and an adjunct professor of criminal and restorative justice at the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford. He is currently working towards a doctorate in education and the psychology of leadership at Aspen University. In his free time, he enjoys ultra running, mountain biking, and hiking with his family. So thank you, Kevin, for joining us today. And we have Piotr Krzemień, who is the IT Help Desk Manager at Goodwin University with 14 years of vast IT experience. He is passionate about IT and enjoys educating users he interacts with on technology knowledge and best practices for successful computing. He is focused on management, leadership, and mentoring of IT professionals. Piotr also enjoys cooking and has been working with sourdough to create breads and other baked treats in his spare time. So thank you for joining us, Piotr. So welcome to our panel. We are going to talk about the crucial need for cybersecurity, and to our panelists' bios, we have a perspective within our conversation from law enforcement, but also in IT. So as we start our conversation, I want to give the audience the 4 question areas that I'm going to ask our panelists to frame our conversation, and then I'm going to start asking our panelists the question. So our conversation today is going to focus on what are the current issues in cybersecurity. Like, I'm an everyday user. I kind of hear these things, but what do they mean, right? Why is our information, meaning our data, so powerful? Are there ways that we can identify quote unquote bad actors online? And what can an individual do to secure their information? So I also want to highlight to the audience, we're going to come at it from a perspective of sort of personal and larger scale use, right? Sort of the basis of IT and the cybersecurity question. All right, awesome. So let me get started with our panel. Let me ask, what are the current issues in cybersecurity? What's going on out there?
There is absolutely nothing to worry about, guys. Use everything freely. I mean, I'll take the steering wheel for a second. From my experience and from working, directly with, first of all, a university scale, IT department. I'm not necessarily a network, administrator or manager or anything like that, but I did get involved in a lot of security / network protection, projects along the way. One of the or a couple of major issues or threats out there is obviously hacking. I'm sorry, I'm just losing my mind here. I'm sorry. So hacking, phishing, phishing email, and pretty much information availability and information mining. So, in a nutshell, hacking is essentially, somebody trying to steal or gain, access to your data without your approval. Phishing is just simply, either via email, either via social networks and such, some sort of information mining for the purposes of the perpetrator. And this can be done, like I said, via email, via fake links, via hiding behind semi-legitimate email that looks just like what you would see on a normal daily basis. And essentially, it's a link leading you to a destination that person controls, and it's nothing related to your network. And by that, you release information that they can then attack a system or your personal data or your company's data and things of that nature. And then obviously, information mining in general, this is a tricky one simply because it's so, so vast in options out there that it can range from either, mixing in phishing and hacking into all of this, but also through very, very simple acts of, using social media channels to ask you questions that you normally wouldn't think twice about answering. You just give them the answers, in a form of a simple questionnaire. Somebody asks you, say, hey, what's the name of your dog? What's this? What's that? Where do you live? It's like, how many kids do you have? And you think it's like, oh yeah, I'll share that data. It's all my friends. But in reality, it's there's a reason why there's about 6,000 to 7,000 comments and all of those things. You don't have 6,000 friends on Facebook. I mean, if you do, you're probably a business. In that case, you should be worried as well. I'll end the introduction for now. I'll let somebody else take over, and we'll continue the conversation.
Sure, thanks, Peter. I'm going to apologize in advance, everyone. My voice is in and out, so it's that awesome time of year. So I apologize ahead of time. But to add to Peter's, information that he was just sharing, is another area that is very big right now is third-party exposure. And what I mean by that is we give our information to a lot of different people for background checks for jobs, to third-party vendors that maybe ask for your name and date of birth at a conference, or your name and date of birth when you're at the doctor's office filling out paperwork. There's these companies that do third-party exposure, and what I mean by that is when your information is entered into these databases, a lot of times cyber criminals find the less protected networks to get into. And one of the big issues that happened in 2021, and I'm sure some of you on this Zoom call today probably remember that, is there was 214 million Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn accounts that were hacked because they were able to get around this third-party exposure network company. And that exposed a lot of information from a lot of people, whether they made fake accounts, whether they, were looking to just maybe get names and dates of birth of people. It's definitely unfortunate. I was just involved in a third-party exposure about a month ago from a part-time job that I had 5 years ago, where my name, date of birth, and social security number was accessed through this third-party vendor that did the background check for the company. So, and we got a letter that you have to do identity theft protection, and all those different things. And I know Kevin can speak to that, having both of us worked in law enforcement, saw a great deal of identity theft and issues along that line. I'm just going to take a quick break for a minute. Thank you.
Sure, I can fill in for you, Kim. I know you're losing your voice. So from a law enforcement perspective, a lot of the things that I saw throughout the years were things that could have been prevented. And a lot of it came down to folks who were responding to suspicious emails, giving personal information. In one particular case, someone had responded to the Prince of Dubai and provided him with a $5,000 check to help him come to this country and improve some infrastructure things. So clearly it was a scam. However, the folks on the surface, they thought they could help him out. If they paid $5,000, they could get $10,000 back. So they thought it was a good investment. So on the surface, a lot of these things, they look legitimate. However, if you dig a little deeper as a consumer, you'll start to realize that they're a scam. So a lot of it, I hate to say it comes down to common sense, but it really does come down to it. And another thing too is if you didn't put in for some sort of sweepstake or something, and you get this email that says you won, there's probably something up, and it's probably a phishing expedition. So certainly, again, common sense comes into play, and definitely protecting your hardware, your software, keeping up to date on things. I know it's a pain to update your computer. I know it's a pain to pay for that software protection, but in reality, all you're doing is investing in your future and keeping your information safe. So, so from a law enforcement perspective, a lot of stuff can be prevented. It's just whether somebody takes the steps to do so.
I'll add to. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if I was muted. I'm sorry. I'll add on to Kevin's input, because from a perspective of an IT person, even the best software out there for protection has holes. Okay, so don't trust it like, hey, you know what? I installed McAfee and I'm good to go. Okay, the weakest part of this software is that the way it comes out of the box, it gives you basic protection. However, the more you actually play around with the settings and internal blocks and all of that stuff, that will get to the more nitty-gritty areas of actually protecting your network. The bottom line is, however, is as long as you have access to the internet, somebody else might get access to your computer. So there's no perfect solution. There really isn't. That is why, our job as IT professionals is, difficult, and it's a daily task. It's a 24/7, protection kind of monitoring and everything, because things change, people get smarter, people find new holes, and between updates from the companies, somebody else is smarter than the next person. Okay. So really, bottom line is to be mindful of your surroundings. Make sure that you pay attention to to a good cybersecurity hygiene. So don't answer things that that don't pertain to you. If you were not expecting an email asking you about donating money or something like this, don't do it. Do your research as well, because sometimes with advertisements, that that is how marketing works. So businesses will market through email, through group chats and all of that stuff. So none of it is illegitimate, but do your research 100% prior to entering into any sort of connection with any company that you may not know. How's that? So
there's a lot of issues in cybersecurity right now. I mean, as an everyday user, right? Just even what you all described to me, I'm still kind of confused between phishing, hacking, all of those. I'm not confused. I know what you explained, but right, there's just so much to look out for, right? And as somebody said, some of these cyber attacks can happen at the same time, right? A phishing email may, please correct me if I have this wrong or correct. A phishing email may be a hack, right? Maybe a 2-in-1. Am I correct there, right? So you started talking about cyber hygiene, right? So that's going to get to our last question, but I'll ask really quickly now. What are some good things to do? What is good cyber hygiene? How about that?
So definitely I can take that for a little bit. How many times do we not change our password until a breach happens? We always forget to change passwords on our cell phones, on our computers, on our iPads, on various devices until something, either fishy happens with an email that we receive or something like that. So it's always really important because we don't think about it, to really change passwords on everything. I would say what, Peter, every 30 days?
I mean, 30 days is look, the more times you can do it, the better, just to protect yourself. But obviously that enters a different zone of, okay, now I'm being, now I'm panicking. Okay. However, most companies, for example, suggest at least 60 to 90-day, password reset threshold. And also, not to get too much into that, to that point, because like Lisa said, this is going to be kind of one of the final questions to discuss as a whole. But be mindful of your passwords and don't just reuse a password everywhere else, because that's the biggest hole.
We do have a question from Ken in the chat, and he's asking, do you all recommend password managers?
I would say it's similar to, yes and no. It's essentially a software that is protected with a password that holds all of your passwords inside of it. So yes, if you, for example, keep your security to that password manager fairly well, but understand that it's also a software that's owned by another company. So use your best judgment. I mean, pen and paper, underneath your desk is also not good. There's no perfect answers to this. Just like Google or Mozilla Firefox, user IDs and such. You can save your profile in there, save all your passwords, and people do this all the time. I do this, for some of my accounts as well. So there are tools out there, but understand just simply that all of these tools could potentially be breached to some level. But again, they're there, they're secure. And if something should happen, most of these companies do protect you, because that is why you pay them to use that software. If it's free, use at your own discretion. If it's something that's paid and you signed a contract, then at least you have a way of arguing with the company, say, hey, look, somebody breached you, not me. How do we come to a resolution? So
we have one more question from Letitia, who is asking, is it best to use the suggested passwords versus our own?
How about this? Any password that has anything of a normal word in it could be guessed. If you use random, generators, there are actually a ton of random password generators online, and I mean, you will need to write them down. Don't get me wrong, but that is probably the only way you can really maximize your security. But it's not convenient. That is the whole whole break between the whole password security and all that stuff. People like to use their daughter's names, husband's names, perfect place for a vacation with a number with an exclamation mark and stuff like this. And hackers know that. If you use random generated sequences, that's the best way to go. But then you need to understand that it's not gonna help you remember those passwords. If you have a really good memory, God bless you.
All right, so let's, because a lot of the conversation we're having, is protecting yourself, right? So as a daily user, is there a way that I can identify bad actors, right? And in this sense, we mean, some bad actors in the sense of, how can I identify this as a hacking email or phishing? I'm sorry, I'm getting the terminology incorrect. What are some ways that we can sort of screen for these things as everyday users? What would you recommend?
I mean, I can chime in on this as well. That's okay. um, Again, using your best judgment is really the key here, because if it's your friends, if it's your family members and such, and they ask you a question directly, then it's probably legitimate. But if it's a survey, or if it's a, hey, sign up for the sweepstake because you get a free prize, but all you have to pay for is shipping and handling, please don't do that. We've had actually quite a few students, since obviously I work for the university's IT department. So before I became manager and I was manning the station, we actually had one particular student come in twice within maybe a week. So first of all, computer was totally mangled with viruses and such. It took us about 2.5 hours to clean it. We got it done. Everything was good. Okay, fine. The student came back about a week or two later with an issue of, you know what, I went on the Goodwin website. This message popped up saying, it's like, hey, grab your free gift. But all you have to pay is shipping and handling. This is a real story. And they clicked yes. And the shipping and handling required credit card information and information like that. They did it. They never received the gift, because obviously that wasn't a legitimate thing on our website. So her computer was still somewhat, attacked by other software in between all of that. So, we had to, help clean it up again and just pretty much advise, please don't do this. That's it. Like, it's really the system is as strong as the weakest link, and usually the weakest link is unfortunately the user. So use your best judgment. If you don't expect it, don't answer it. If you kind of expect it but you're not sure, ask the question before providing the information.
Any other?
I think just to add to Peter, and what Peter said, from a law enforcement perspective, again, the majority of the cases we saw were people that were either acquaintances, family members, or kind of loose friendships in those that are stealing other people's identity and hacking their computers and stuff. So when it comes down to passwords, protect your passwords. Don't use something that other people are going to know about. And your information itself, you're going to want to keep it private. And it's like the old days of sharing your PIN with somebody for your credit card or your debit card. If you share it with your friend, they're going to have access to your money. So it's kind of the same concept with your computer. Don't share your password. And that was ingrained in me in the police world. And it's something that I've always told people, just don't share your password with your friends, because you never know what they're going to do behind your back. And I'm certainly not saying that, friends are automatically going to do that, but it does happen. And some folks will do that to enter, all the financial stuff and to grab as much money as they can. So you need to be careful.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely correct, Kevin. It's sometimes it's the people closest to you that know you very well, and if they have I don't know, bad intentions, they will know a lot of stuff about you, and they'll know your dog's name, they'll know your address, they'll know your previous addresses and all of that stuff. And it's like, and this could get really, really out of hand really quickly. So yeah, absolutely. Like, keep them all guessing, because it is unfortunate. Nobody likes passwords. Nobody likes multi-factor authentication. It stinks. Trust me, for me, it stinks. And as an IT professional, I have to remember 15 to 20 passwords on a daily basis, and it sucks. But it's a world we live in. Like, there's a reason why we lock our doors, why we lock our cars outside in the parking lot and such. It's one way to prevent it. It's like, it's not gonna protect it to the T, but at least you're eliminating the easy break-ins.
And another thing too, Peter, too, with like vulnerability is, pay attention to what, with phishing emails and stuff like that, where the email address was generated from. If it was really your family member or a friend or somebody that, we get tons of emails on a daily basis I'm sure everybody on this call, their email goes off constantly, but always be mindful too of where that email was generated from, if you recognize it or not. Or if it's your email that was hacked and somebody's sending it, on behalf of you and you don't even know it.
Mhm. One thing I'll bring up from our earlier conversation, I forget who said it, but how can we identify bad actors? But one of the things I've learned in our conversations is a lot of these quizzes that pop up on Facebook, right? A lot of these, what kind of jewel are you? I've seen something like that, right? You answer these questions, and as you say, they seem very, what's your favorite dog? Or they could guess like that. Why are those also, why can we identify those as bad actors as well?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I was actually reading a comment that popped up. So can you just quickly repeat this? I'm sorry.
So what I was asking was, even things that appear innocent, right? Such
Right.
as like the quizzes on Facebook, I have the proper terminology. But why can those be identified as bad actors? Even like the simple quizzes of like, guess
Oh.
what animal you are.
So actually, I was trying to look for a video I saw once, and it was kind of a funny video, kind of a not necessarily a joke, but just to kind of explain how people think when it comes to security of networks or of their own personal stuff. So there was a random person walking around with a microphone asking people a bunch of questions, and then they went into a conversation of, so let me guess. It's like, some of your passwords probably include this and this and this and a number and a dollar sign and something like this, and 3 out of like 10 people were like, whoa, you literally guessed my password. It's not 8 out of 10, no, by any means, but people are very predictable. And with the passwords being complicated and required everywhere, people will kind of ease up on it and say that, what, I'm just going to keep it somewhat simple, but I'm going to add a few secret characters in there, and fool everybody. The problem is that it's like, these guys are already trained to know these patterns. There's fancy software out there that decrypts passwords left and right, but easy passwords are probably take them 0.3 seconds versus difficult passwords take them 0.9 seconds. Okay. So yeah, it's very important to keep people guessing, and even from simple technology. I think part of the question, I didn't finish it, but simple technology that we have, let's say iPhones, and I'm not sure about Androids today, but I did have an Android and I don't think I had this functionality, but face recognition. How many people use face recognition as their opening of their iPhone? I mean, come on, like, think about it. You can actually literally come up to a sleeping person, put the phone in front of their face. There you go. You have access to it. You don't even have to know any password, any number sequences, nothing. And I'm sure you guys, Kim and Kevin, you can speak from that, with experience of, let's say, people that were found, around with their phones, and it's like, hey, we can open it. Let's see if they had a face recognition. It's like, yes, they do. And boom, you have access to everything. You don't have to contact Apple and fancy stuff and figure out passwords. It's like, that's as easy as it gets. Even, criminals being picked up, while driving or something like this. It's like, hey, let me see your phone. Boom, you got it open. Probably 8 out of 10 people use that. I do. And I actually realize it once in a while, I'm like, you know what? I should know better. But it's easy. And it's like, and that's how the companies and all of that stuff gets us. And we don't think about it beyond the face value. So.
And a lot of times too, Peter, with our information being so powerful, is how many of us use personal identifiable information all the time? The last 4 of your social security number, maybe your date of birth, or you come up with a specific PIN to get into your Comcast account or your, you know, your cell phones. And that's the same number that you use for your ATM card and, you know, things like that. So that sensitive data is so important to protect or remember where you use it, because all somebody needs to get is that 4-digit code to get into your ATM account, and that opens up the door to your bank accounts. And a lot of people store that stuff on their cell phones. I'm guilty of it every once in a while. But you know, it's something to be mindful of.
I want to quickly just address the question if I can, and then we're going to move on to our next question since Kim brought it up about why is our data so powerful. So Ken is asking in the chat, is there a real risk that the Russian government supported hackers will go after Western banks, electric grids, etc.? From my understanding, there is a risk, and that's why there is a lot of companies, commercial companies have been focusing on their infrastructure, IT wise, and part of why we've approached this session in terms of personal security, right? You know, because I think this came up in one of our sessions about it does take a community. So while the bigger companies need to protect themselves in terms of like hardware, I'm going to get this wrong, in terms of the infrastructure, it's also really important that we as individuals are also aware and sort of protect ourselves along with those companies. So having that sort of holistic support to that.
So actually, funny you should mention that. Last week or so, I have been getting a lot of emails from, you know, companies that do, you know, network security or cybersecurity, and they actually mentioned exactly that issue. That it's like, hey, with the rise of sanctioning and all of that stuff in Russia, you know, cyber security attack or cyber attacks have grown significantly, and you know, essentially they offer a service of, look, if you already done this, that's fine, you know, you're good to go. But if you know, if you should need some help, contact us for this and, you know, for this and the service. But they are warning, you know, companies about this, meaning, you know, it's going to be a matter of time before somebody starts fighting back. Because if you can put a sanction on, I'm sure there's a way of getting into that computer, into that system, into that network to try to attack them back and kind of fight that warfare in a silent manner. So
to our next question, and Kim started talking about it. So tell us, why is our information, meaning our data here, why is it so powerful? It is absolutely one of the most powerful tools right now out there in the world, but we can't see it. We don't touch it. We can't do anything with it, right? Why is it so powerful?
oh,
You want me to
anybody
start?
takes
You got it, Peter?
Yeah, sure. Well, everything about our, you know, our person is important to somebody. That's the first, you know, trick of the trade in marketing and communications that you learn. I did take a couple of, you know, marketing classes along the way, and you know, not that I'm a master in it or anything like that, because I don't, you know, necessarily own a successful business on my own. But with you know, essentially anything that's free, like Facebook, like Instagram, like anything else, somebody needs to get paid. If Facebook is $1 billion company, right? I mean, that's just common sense at this point. So how do they get their money? From advertising. How do they get advertising, you know, buy-in? From our information. It doesn't necessarily have to be personal information. It doesn't have to be your name, your address, all of that stuff, but your general age, your general, you know, location, your general trends, your, you know, your interests and all that stuff. So a male living in, you know, Eastern Connecticut or whatever, you know, age, you know, 42, likes so and so and so and so. Now all of a sudden they get data that, you know, there's actually 2 of these guys. Actually, there's 30 of these guys. Hey, you know what? Let's throw some advertising that way from this company and all that stuff. It's very harmless because you're really just helping a market or helping a business, you know, market their product, right? But think about what you can do with all this information if you're trying to, let's say, send propaganda messages or anything that you want a particular person, particular demographic to believe, whether it's true or not. And that particular group is going to believe it because guess what? It fits their trends, their preferences and all of that stuff, even though they don't necessarily want to do that. But the power of disinformation or misinformation is super, super crucial. So I think that kind of starts the conversation in that subject.
Any others? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, another area too is our health information and just in general, our personal information. You can do a lot of things with someone's name, date of birth, their address, and social security number. You can open up accounts, you can open up fraudulent accounts, you can do a lot of things that go down, like I always say, the identity theft corridor, because of that type of data. That's all that's needed to open up certain things. And that's why our personal information, even, our information that we write on forms on a daily basis or something, you're signing up for, a card at ShopRite so you can get discounts on groceries. That's data. They're taking all your data on that form and entering it into a system that has the potential, like back in the beginning that I talked about, that third-party exposure being, compromised. So it's just something to be mindful of too. We use our personal information for almost everything, whether it's to identify ourselves on a phone, whether it's to identify ourselves, via paperwork. There's a lot of things that, can be very, unfortunately can compromise us quite a bit if that data were to get into the hands of the wrong person. Whether or not they use it is a different story, but the potential is there, and that's the most dangerous piece. And I'm sure Kevin could fill in with a few other things that, the two of us have seen quite a bit over the years.
Really, what I was going to add too is there's a psychological element to it. I think now we're more than willing to share our social security number on some sort of website. If it's a medical or financial type document, we're more likely to share it than over the phone. And because of that, that is out there. I mean, people live their lives through social media, through really any kind of internet interface. So as a result of that, all the information is there. And it's, if you know what you're doing, you can get it and you can really wreak havoc. We saw it all the time in law enforcement. And unfortunately, a lot of times these poor folks who are victims of identity theft, it started with just an innocent reply to an email or putting their information on some website, and then just created a nightmare for them. So it can happen very, very quickly. And sometimes when your quote number is up and the hackers get a hold of your information, it's really hard to recover.
That's an interesting point, Kevin, because you made me flash back to my freshman year of college. And I remember being in the bookstore and they're like, what's your student ID, which I didn't know, or what's your social? And I remember feeling like, you're not supposed to say that. Like, you're not supposed to say your, it was, you don't talk about it, right? Like, I'm not supposed to say that, right? It was almost like saying a bad word in church, right? And now I feel like we say it so much, like, it's just like, I could say my social security number back and forth without even thinking about it. And how much, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, how has privacy moved, or what we view as private and what is not private, but also how likely are we to share? Like you were just saying, oh, okay, I'm signing up for a medical appointment at a doctor's office. Okay, that's just what they need. We don't second guess it anymore. So how public are our lives now, based on what you're saying, whether we choose to engage or we don't?
So to that, actually, I would want to add also kind of the place that most of these companies and or anything we touch, whatever companies, supermarkets, or all of that stuff, they put us in. It's essentially, you either agree to these terms or you don't get what we have to offer. I mean, you buy a new iPhone, $1,000. If you don't click agree to this one particular message, you cannot continue. You cannot use our device because we require this and this. So recently Apple had actually, put in an update in, in their phones or in their operating systems that prevents or gives the user an option of sharing personal data with certain applications and all of that stuff, which prior to this was happening automatically. So obviously, Facebook was one of those applications, and now you actually have to, when you can actually say, it's like, no, don't share my data. And Facebook has raised, hell about this, because that's where they get their money. They're losing billions of dollars for us saying no. But it's like, but that goes literally to everything. It's like, any privacy agreements and stuff like this. It's like, we don't read that, but it's like, because we assume that we know exactly what's in there, that it's like, yeah, a bunch of crazy mumbo jumbo and stuff it is. And it's like, and it is mumbo jumbo, because it's all it's all very, very, very tough language that most of us really can't follow. But it's done on purpose so that in case of this company doing what they maybe sometimes didn't even intend to do, but they did it by mistake, they protect themselves. So unless we have a lawyer looking at every single thing that we agree to, it's like we're kind of subject to just kind of trusting the system. Or we don't use any of this stuff, which is very hard today with everything. And also a big part of it is the databases that we put our information in are there's so many of them, so many different companies have different security protection, cybersecurity protection and such, that we're only as strong as our weakest link. So TJ Maxx several years ago had a breach to their system. They stole, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000. I mean, 200,000 credit card numbers and personal information, about customers, because they had such terrible security in on their network. So you have to pay attention, but sometimes we are just human and we want to do what normal people do. We want to go to Stop and Shop and use our card and get the 10% discount when it comes around. But
So now that we've told you everything that's been happening, right? There's a lot going on. And we have a few minutes left. What can the individual do to secure their information, right? So, as to all the panelists have presented, right? There's many issues in cybersecurity, right? There's many ways that we just engage in this, whether we're thinking about it or not. Really the question now becomes, can we not engage in the digital world, right? Is the digital world here to stay? That's for another session. We'll put that out in the summer or something, right? So what are some tangible things that our audience members can do to secure their information now, knowing what you have all just shared with us today? What can be done?
Go ahead, Kim.
Most recently, I went to a meeting that an individual from the FBI, used a special agent that was assigned to the cyber division, and he was matter of fact about this entire conversation. He's like, you don't lock your car is vulnerable. You don't secure your computer is vulnerable. And everyone kind of was just looking at him, but it was a really good takeaway. And another great takeaway was, don't drive in bad neighborhoods. If an email looks suspicious, if something looks suspicious that you're receiving on your phone, like FedEx is delivering a package to your house and you don't have anything and there's a link attached to it, don't click on suspicious things. There was some pretty good takeaways that he offered. So those are a couple. I know everybody else has a bunch.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sorry, Kevin. Did you want to?
No, it's okay. You can go first.
Okay. Obviously password security. Use mindful passwords that don't include too many details about your personal life. Make it up and learn it. Don't tell anybody about what you made up. And again, like Kim said, just don't drive in bad neighborhoods. It's, if you think it's suspicious, ask a question, before you say, hey, I think this is good. If you think this is good, think again. If you don't know for sure, ask a question, find out. Worst case scenario, that person's going to reach out back to you through other means necessary. There's like, hey, I want to follow up because, you know, it's like you never responded to my email. What's going on? Oh, so it was legitimate. Okay. But if it looks weird, don't click it. Don't go on websites you don't know. And, you know, be mindful on social media, even with stuff that you say, even with stuff that you post and all of that stuff. It's like, as a manager and as a, you know, as a hiring manager, for example, that's the first place I look for. You know, I look at social media, LinkedIn accounts, Facebook accounts, and see what these people are all about. And you'll be surprised what pops up on just a regular Google search about a particular person. And, you know, you guys can also speak to that. But that's how I, you know, eliminate, you know, 20, you know, possible candidates from a 40 candidate bucket. So.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, and it's kind of been a term that's been used loosely throughout this whole conversation, is cyber hygiene. And I think you have to make it part of your routine. And it's done through education, you know, just kind of keeping your ear out for the trends that are out there, because let's face it, when a trend hits or goes viral, it's all over the internet. And that's kind of the time that, something's wrong here. I really need to look at my own routine. So, but, you know, check in with the security regularly, make sure that you're using the right passwords, that you're not using, you know, your kid's name or your pet's name or something. And, you know, routine and repetition, and that's the best thing you can do. And, you know, make sure you have backup files, make sure you have all your stuff that's not connected to the internet somewhere safe, because if you do lose it, it's better to just walk away than to try to repair it, because I'm sure repairing it's going to cost you a pretty penny, if not just losing all the data together. So, but that's really just, you know, cyber hygiene is the key.
I'm pretty sure Kevin and I have probably like said this a million times in our career, is if your environment doesn't feel right, you better go with your instincts, because it's probably suspicious and there's probably something wrong. So if you have that initial feeling of an email that you received or a weird text message on your iPad or your cell phone, go with your instincts all the time, because it's probably suspicious.
And don't send $5,000 to the Prince of Dubai. Please don't do that. Okay. He's got plenty of money. He's okay.
Or don't accept $5,000.
Yes,
well.
please.
I mean, I don't know. I would just be fascinated. Like, how do they know me? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, a couple others that I didn't, or to add, and I think they've been sort of included loosely in our conversation. Multi-factor authentication is a must at this point, right? I was sharing with my colleagues before we started. You know, recently a friend of ours, he's a real estate agent. His account was hacked, not having the multi-factor authentication. I'm sorry, I should clarify. Instagram was hacked. That is something where he shares properties and things that happen. And he actually showed a text message conversation about what had happened, and his data was being held until he paid $1,000 to get it back. So this data is quite important, right? And the question is, he's a small business. How important was that account to him? Was it $1,000 or starting a new one? And these are the types of crimes or issues we're seeing. So multi-factor authentication, again, not perfect. However, it's an extra layer of protection. I think you all added also about spyware technology, software. Kevin, you had mentioned keeping your operating system up to date. I mean, you know, doing all of that stuff as a general user, I'm not going to remember to reinstall the software all the time. So like, what's a good length of time? Should I, you know, you said passwords as often as possible. How often should I update my software? Any suggestions there?
Well, luckily for, you know, most of the, you know, general public, unless they really know how to change things in settings in their, you know, new devices that they get, there's usually an option turned on by default that it updates things automatically as they come, you know, available. Let's say, you know, the iPhone has that capability. You can turn that off, but by default it's turned on, and it will just simply notify this like, hey, you know what, at this time, tonight at 7 p.m. this update will run. You have an option to, let's say, postpone it a couple of times and such, but when it reaches that threshold, it's just going to be like, look, sorry buddy, I'm running. Like, you have to understand, you need me. On computers it's a little bit harder, but don't just simply get a security program and just install it. Installing it, McAfee or any of these, and I use McAfee because it's a no name, but any of these network protectors and stuff like that is fantastic, but unless you get into the settings of it and actually block certain things manually, it's literally as good as not buying it and letting the built-in stuff in, let's say, Windows or the Mac environment to control it, which is already installed by default. So unless you don't really know what you're doing with this, don't spend the money, because it's literally going to slow down your system more so than help it. And it's really not going to protect you any much more. So, and that's, speaking from experience.
So I wanted to quickly ask if there are any additional comments from our panelists before I open up to any questions from the audience. Definitely, there's a wealth of information that was shared. So any final comments from our panelists before I open it up to questions? I will leave you with this because this is something they shared with me and I'm going to take away from this. So I'm going to leave everybody with this. Information is worth more than money. That really stuck out to me in our conversation. We had multiple conversations planning for this, and the idea that information is worth more than money, right? Be mindful what you give up in exchange for a resource or service. That's what I'll leave our conversation with. I think there's definitely a lot more that we can certainly talk about, but I want to give our audience an opportunity to ask any questions. Okay, I see a hand up already.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to add one more small thing to exactly what you just said. As part of my job, I also oversee, pre-K to 12 environment. And to be absolutely honest, if you were to follow their rules of data protection, you're probably in a safe zone. Because a lot of the applications that people use freely left and right are not allowed by the state to be used because of data that it shares. So just 2 cents.
You have a question already. Thank you. Can any of ways to gain our personal information roll over into gaming? Are any pointers for the parents in the groups? So just to make sure, gaming, virtual gaming, correct?
I actually just went through this with my kids, so this is an interesting question. The answer to that is yeah, because my credit card now is a separate credit card for my bank as a result of what he did. But my credit card is attached to his gaming system because a lot of these games, they require add-ons. So the kids have to spend $1 here, $2 here, $3 here, and your credit card is attached to the account. So because your credit card is attached, now your personal information, address, name, all that information is also attached there as well. Mm-hmm. What I did was I went out and got one of those prepaid credit cards. And now I put it on his account. And it didn't start because of an identity theft or hacking issue. It's because the little bugger was spending more money than he was supposed to. So I was getting a constant amount of coming out of my account. And I'm like, where is this coming? And I couldn't keep track of it. So we just like an extra layer there and to get a prepaid debit card to put on there. And I know my information is still there, but I feel a little more comfortable knowing that I can control how much money can come off that card. Because one of the things you can do in video games is you can share, like you can gift somebody so essentially money. It's online money, virtual money, and that's what he had done. It was a large amount. So again, there's ways that you can protect it, but yes, the answer is yes, your information's there.
And also to add to that, being a I'm gonna say former gamer myself, everything is attached to some sort of, especially right now. Everything is an internet-based, game environment. So multiple accounts from, Xbox, PlayStation, Microsoft, PC gaming and all of that stuff have been hacked, have been stolen, interjected, intercepted, and all of that stuff. Because you know what? A lot of people are really serious about their gaming stuff. And once you get to a certain level, that account is actually worth a lot of money. You can actually sell your accounts to people online.
Wow.
For whatever it's worth. And yeah, so that's a huge target, especially knowing that the age of of the user can range anything from I don't know, 10 at this point to however late you're able to hold the controller and actually be active with it. So
Any other questions for our panelists?
I hope it didn't scare you guys too much. That wasn't really the intention. The intention was to kind of open the minds of, or open the eyes to the things out there, and just be mindful about what is out there and what to do to protect yourself. That's all.
I do feel like there was a lot of information. There's a lot to process, right? Knowing this is something that we all interact with on a daily basis. And I think as we were planning this multiple times, we're like, there's just so much. How much can we do in an hour? I know that was something that we talked about a lot. So hopefully that was, as Peter said, the beginning of a conversation about cybersecurity, or at least reinforcing some information and with some helpful tips. So if there are no other questions, I will just sort of
Looks like there might be. I think Vera has.
Oh,
Looks like.
did I miss it? I'm sorry.
Yes, it's Vera. I just wanted to say, like when you get those robocalls or someone call and they never say something to you, they be tracking or trying to get information from you like that? No, over the phone or cell phone?
I mean, to a point, yes. All they will know really, because it's a simple conversation. So it's not like they're, getting in through like a Zoom call or something like this and, get into your network. So I wouldn't worry too much. It's just more of a nuisance, to be absolutely honest.
Yes.
And the trick about this is, so we enter the age of voice over or pretty much internet-based telephony.
Mm-hmm.
So right now these systems allow you to essentially set up any number as an outgoing number, as your number. So for example, like I got a few calls from my own phone number. And I'm looking at it, it's like, well, that's interesting.
Yes.
I don't remember making that call. So it's honestly, it's just stupid marketing, people trying to get you, like, please just don't answer those. And you can block them, but they will be back. So it's kind of like mosquitoes.
With a different number.
Exactly.
I usually block them and delete them, but they, like I said, they still come back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do the same, and then they just, one or two got me, because one said Yukon Health, but center didn't finish. But I'm like, who's calling me from Yukon? I got scared, so I picked up. I'm like, they got me on that one. That one was good. That one, I thought I was worried something happened. Nothing happened. Yeah. So any other questions? Huh?
No, to Diana's. Oh yeah, we had emails coming out from our president requesting Apple gift cards, and somebody actually answered it, and we were like, "Look, I don't think he's gonna need an Apple gift card."
I can tell you I'm an Apple fan, so.
So if you get it from Kevin, it may be legitimate because he's an Apple fan.
Yes.
From anybody else may not be. There, John said that's why he doesn't answer emails. I don't even know where to go from that comment. So any questions for our panelists and sharing information? again, we hope that this wasn't sort of a scary conversation, more so being mindful of it. There's definitely more that we can explore. I want to thank you all for coming again to our session. Thank you for joining us. I did want to note before you log off, I did put the link in. We have one more session of this series next week. We'll be talking to Dr. Stacy Mattern from the University of Connecticut, and we're going to talk about what does it mean to live in a democracy. So this is going to be our last session for our series. It'll be a conversation between Dr. Mattern and myself, but we're going to share a lot about that next week, and then we'll be back soon with them, but that will wrap up our semester of programming. So again, I want to thank our panelists for sharing all of their wealth of knowledge today. I want to thank our audience for coming, and I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer them, and I look forward to seeing you next week.